number. Thank you.
I know, it's my favorite number. And I've talked to a lot of people today that are feeling kind of spooked, like Friday the 13th, 2020, the worst year ever. And I'm like, I'm excited. And I thought it was cool when we were trying to schedule something that this happened to be the day, because you are a light, like you do work magic with your clients. And so I wanted to hear more about all the modalities you use, because we've had so many conversations and, I've helped you schedule some of your patients for SPECT scans. I didn't realize how much you did. And I was just kind of blown away because you're so humble. So I was hoping you could share a little bit more about all the modalities that you use and then kind of where you started, because it sounds like on your website, you started more in like the massage therapy realm. Is that true?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's so interesting. When people tell me about you, I have to say I'm an artist at heart.
I love it.
I love life being a self-expression and right and beauty. And when I was in high school, I really was on a career path for ballet. So really high level training, intensity, needing to have a healthy body, a healthy mind, really managing, my beliefs and thoughts. And I didn't know that part of my journey would be I would have to step away from that because I have a structural anomaly in my lumbar spine. So as I progressed and that really pushed on that defect, it really was impacting my ability to continue. And of course, I've always have been kind of a brainiac, haha, right? Like why I love all of us nerds that come to really study the body and the mind. I decided, okay, I'm a good student. I've got a really high grade point average. I'll go to university. So at that point, I felt like, well, I need to study business, understand business and marketing and everything that is in the world of everyday life. And I loved it and I did really well. But in my heart, I wasn't on the right path yet. And that's okay, because everything I've done has served me even now. And so what I found is when I finished my work at university, I was really being called to the healing arts. And this was, back in the 80s, where it was sort of before it's as mainstream as it is now. And I think part of me was seeking my own healing through the trauma and stress of, life, different childhood experiences, what the ballet world offered, but also had the dysfunction within it.
I've got a couple patients that were ballerinas and it's pretty intense.
Yeah, pretty intense. And so I live in San Diego, and there was a great school here called the Institute of Psychostructural Balancing. And it really spoke to me because this whole body mind, I knew, right? I lived, and I knew I needed more information, right? More education. So one of their aspects was training in body work, particularly somatic therapy, relieving trauma. I really went down the neuromuscular deep tissue route as a dancer because I was loving the anatomy, the physiology, the kinesiology. And so I was in that part of body work, right? Hands-on.
Love it.
And of course, then when you start interacting with people, you're like, oh, there's energy going on here, or there's belief systems, or there's like emotional trauma stored in the body. And what I've loved is this field has allowed the lifetime learner that I am to just keep progressing. And so people originally sort of knew me as someone who did body work, different types of body work, particularly structural work and myofascial release and recovering from injury pain. And then the trauma piece came on. And I remember years ago when I saw body work being done in water, I just started crying because I'm sort of a water baby. And when I saw people, like there's nothing like water, right? I'll go to the water for healing, for meditation and everything. And I mean, we're mostly water anyway, right? So, and when I saw that, it touched me at such a deep place that Harold Dull, who was the originator of what we knew as Watsu at the time, water shiatsu, I went and studied with him because he was bringing body work into the water for pain relief, for recovery, for emotional healing. And I knew that that was part of who I was and what I would do. So that's something I've done for a very long time. And it allowed me to be part of a program in San Diego where we offered this aquatic bodywork for veterans with PTSD.
Cool.
So I got to go into a deeper dive on trauma, recovery, And so who knew my back injury, which led to major reconstructive surgery in '08 for me, I have a double spinal fusion, would give
Wow.
me so much information on how to work with people physically, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. Like, how do we navigate the dark nights of the soul, right? And those changes that happen in life. And so when a veteran would come to me with a back injury or trauma from the unexpected in life, I had had my own versions of that, right? I hadn't been in active duty, but my epigenetics knew those stories, family members that had been through it, and my own life experience. But as I worked with more veterans and we were getting traumatic brain injuries, and there were levels of trauma that I had studied but didn't understand the deeper issues of brain imbalance and brain trauma, people said to me, well, what else are you going to do? And I'm like, if I could do it all over again, I'd love to be a neuroscientist. I want to know what's going on, with our brains.
Yeah.
And when Dr. Amon's clinics, I've known for years, I followed his work on PBS, I've read his books, was offering certification and training, it was just like the magic for me, because I got to really feed that part of me that wanted to do a deeper dive into neuroscience, right? Bioregulation of the brain and what that means. And so not only did I take the training, but I went to the clinic and had a scan. I had a SPECT scan. And I loved it because I didn't have pathology. I didn't have anything um, chronic in what we might say a traditional kind of clinical diagnosis or an
Yeah.
acute injury, but I wanted to know about my brain. And I've always been into the greatest gift we can give ourselves and others is our own self-awareness, our own self-growth, our own self-knowledge. And
Totally.
yeah, I mean, like you, I loved your story about how you learned so much as you got your brain scan. So I got my brain scanned and it was so great because Dr. Amin is like, well, let me tell you about yourself looking at your, I'm like, oh my God, that's like so me, right?
Yeah.
And so I just knew that that was perfect, but it wasn't just, let me tell you about you. This is your brain's strength. This is where your brain could use support. This is how your brain's regulation or dysregulation is playing out in your life. And I felt good, I felt successful. I felt accomplished. I wasn't looking for a quote unquote fix, but I've always felt like we could be empowered and really longevity. I'm 58 and I plan
Wow.
to age out well. And my grandmother lived to 102. And I don't have a retirement plan because I believe life is so beautiful to stay engaged with. So I was like, I need to know what's going on with my brain, right? At 58. And as I went through the course and did the training, every other modality, whether it's body work I do, whether it's coaching I do, whether it's teaching NLP and language patterns, all these things, right? Aquatic work, self-evaluation, meditation. I'm certified to teach yoga. I mean, the list kind of goes on. Go on my
It
website.
really does. Yeah, your website's beautiful. What is it?
SharonPlache.com. So it's my
Thanks.
name.com. And every time I was going through a training, it was a piece, it was like a facet of the diamond. And I also thought, I need to know more about the brain. So when I took the certification, things started to land for me. Like they made sense. There were links that were happening for my well being. And as I had shared with you when we've talked before, and Dr. Amin talks about this, you start to look at people through the awareness of their brain, what's regulated, what's dysregulated, and why they're having some of the challenges. And I realized unless the brain has the opportunity to biobalance and heal, every good intention, a goal, living from our values, you know, um, even changing our fitness program and our nutrition won't fully maximize its fullest potential. And I've always been fascinated with the vagus nerve and the balance of the autonomic nervous system. And I think the reason I went into the healing arts is my vagus nerve was asking for support. And
Mm-hmm.
so realizing that kind of bilateral communication from the brain and the importance of the vagus nerve and our gut health, in the training, I was getting that validation, that awareness, and learning not only assessment skills, but tools, right, to apply in my life. And also then my role, I feel often, is an educator as well as a practitioner or a facilitator for someone. And then, I shared with you, I went and did the Havening practitioner training because I was always curious about how trauma was encoded in the brain. And,
Mhm.
and I learned about that through Dr. Amen's the amygdala hijacking, right? Him showing that particular technique. And I went and did the deep dive in that neuroscience with Dr. Ronald and Stephen Rudin. And again, pieces were dropping into place. Things were making sense for me. Oh, that's what's going on in the brain. That's where the trauma is stored. Now, how can we begin to rebuild the brain? And so I was giggling this year and for 2020, like with COVID-19, I almost felt like I was starting over or starting a new chapter of possibilities of how I might support other people. And, when we had all of our businesses shut down and things closed, the guidance that I got was to keep investing in myself, keep utilizing the opportunity for lifetime learning for my wellness, for the wellness of others. And so you can tell I'm kind of passionate about it, right?
I
Because
know. I love it. And I just love your attitude toward everything. Cause I mean, I did too, but I was already so excited about being in this new position. I mean, my start date was February 2nd, and then COVID hit pretty soon after that. So it really just kind of like kicked my butt into gear, like, oh wow, like this is happening. Like I have this job change. Like I'm going to be working with coaches. I'm not going to be working with patients anymore. There's 5,000 coaches across the world. Like I was having all this anxiety, and I'm like, it's gonna be
yeah.
okay. I'm focusing on myself. And like we were talking about before we went live, it's like this week, I've just met these amazing people. We've had these amazing conversations, and it's like, we're saying this message of what if mental health was brain health? More importantly, what are you doing and what do you know about what you can do to find healing? Because there are people like you all over the country that have all these different types of modalities, because we're not a cookie, we're not cookie cutter focused when it comes to healing. We're not all the same. You might have a similar story, you might have a similar genetic makeup, but that has nothing to do with this is the specific tailored plan that you need, and having someone that can help with that.
And that's what I loved, unless we look, we don't know, right? And that's
Right.
what Dr. Ahmed really talked about. And since the brain is such a master control, right, and works with the other really fundamental aspects of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, we really don't know. And you've had a chance to work with my brother, right? And I really wanted to know what was going on with his brain. And I knew he'd had some brain injuries, but I didn't know how that was going to play out in
Mm-hmm.
his cognitive function and emotional mood regulation. And he's doing amazing. So he came up and had a scan, and I've been his coach through that process, and he's been able to really heal some old brain injuries that a lot of times just get passed off. Oh, that's just a concussion on the football field, no big deal, you're fine, right? Or that's just a car accident, you're fine. And that contra coup trauma in the brain, and then the encoding in the limbic system, right, with the
Right.
vigilance and anxiety in the basal ganglia and the trauma in the amygdala. And it's like I knew these things intuitively, experientially, but to have the language and the neuroscience and then the lifestyle tools. Like what I've loved is there's different approaches. We can go through it nutritionally, we can go through it lifestyle choices, we can utilize pharmaceuticals when necessary. I love there's the nutraceuticals and the pharmaceuticals. And everybody, like you said, love, is unique. And I've really just felt so much gratitude. And what's been really fun, like when I was working with Dr. Mina, because he, worked with my brother too, and I got to listen in on those calls, is he was talking about, does your brain need like amping up? Are you doing caffeine to like activate your brain, your prefrontal
Mm-hmm.
cortex? Are you tending to attract to that? Or are you looking for things that are relaxing you and calming you down, right? Well, I'm looking for the things to relax and calm my brain. And so we were looking like, how do you do that in lifestyle choices? Well, meditation, yoga, those kinds of things were easy for me. But he also said, when I look at your brain scan, there's some other nutraceuticals that would help that part of your brain. And that has made all the difference for me, right? Knowing when I need that serotonin upregulation, right, for my anterior signaling. And it makes me a really good student. I love to figure out how things work, right? But it also can get overactive, right? And so
Yeah.
really understanding that. So that's what I mean by listening and observing someone, like where their patterns are. And I felt like, I can do lots of modalities really well, but unless I'm supporting the biobalance and the brain function, you're going to always be bumping up against that, right? Always
Mhm.
bumping up against that. And so, whether someone has an interest to study more about the brain for their own well being or an appreciation for their family, or maybe they're bringing it in even to their workplace, of awareness of who their staff is, right? What their challenges might be, or if
Yeah.
they're bringing it into their practice. I found the information through the books and the trainings really user friendly, right? Accessible, technical enough, but not too technical for someone who might be intimidated by that. And I loved your story about how people are often misdiagnosed, right? Or
Mhm.
they're given the wrong um, recovery plan. And because they don't really know, because they haven't had their brain scanned. And what I loved with the coaching program for me was, if someone doesn't have the resources to go get a SPECT scan, the assessments, the questionnaire assessments are really good to get
Right.
a sense of where some dysregulation is and where that person might need support. So there's so many affordable ways to have that support there. And I know we talked about too that I've been doing a lot of biofeedback, right? These last couple
Yeah,
of
I
years,
love
heart
that.
rate variability, EEG, neurofeedback. And again, I was coming up against, I could get so far with someone without really looking at the biobalance of the brain, right? And when Dr. Almond says know your numbers, it's really,
Yes,
really true.
it
Really,
is. It's so frustrating when people don't, I was talking to someone today, like, do you know what your vitamin D is? They're like, I have no idea. I'm like, okay, so you need to know that. It's a neurohormone. It's important for every cell in your body. And if you have poor vitamin D, you can have chronic fatigue, pain, depression, with or without suicidal thoughts. And that's just one vitamin that costs like $20 to get tested through your primary care doctor.
right. And you want to know a funny story about that, Fallon? So when I
Yes.
went for my physical last year, I went in proactive. These are the things I'd like to get. And she said, oh, we don't do vitamin D blood test anymore. And I said, excuse me? And she goes, oh, no, the latest research says it's not important. And I said, well, okay, I appreciate your perspective. However, I would like you to check mine because I know it's important and I haven't had it checked for, a year. So
Mhm.
she said, yes, she would. But then when I had the labs and got down there, it wasn't in the labs. Peace out. No problem. I know things happen. So I live in San Diego, right? I'm in the sun, I'm taking vitamin D. So I'm assuming my vitamin D is good enough, right? Even Dr. Ahmed talked about that, right? He thought his vitamin D was good enough. So when I worked with Dr. Amina and got the protocol to get all my labs, and I met with another doctor and they were amazing. I got all the labs, same care provider. Guess what? My vitamin D was low.
What was it?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. It wasn't like chronically, like frighteningly low, but it was definitely like lower than I felt like was healthy for me.
Gotcha. Like maybe 30s.
Yeah, I think it was below 50, but not in the 30s. Just,
Okay.
I just remember like having a sense of like shock.
Yeah.
And I realized that I needed to use a different form. So I do a sublingual vitamin D. I feel like my body
Good.
is able to assimilate it better. But
Right.
this is the thing that I really found fascinating, is because I know that the body can't metabolize serotonin correctly without the correct levels of vitamin D.
Right.
And so one of the biggest protocols for me was I needed serotonin support, right? For my anterior cingulate, right? Taking saffron, right? Taking 5-HTP. And so here I'm doing all the right things, but if I don't have the correct biobalance, it's not able to be functioning at its highest level. So that's
Absolutely. Thank you for explaining that. That's such an important piece. The spec is the most wonderful thing ever. I love it. But if you don't do the functional medicine labs, you're not going to get where you want to be.
Yeah. And I thought other things might be off, like hormones given my age and things like that. But it was primarily that. And even when we think about, that gut biome, most of the serotonin, not most, forgive me for a generalization, but a lot is actually created in the gut, right?
More than any other neurotransmitter.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I've got a good, healthy gut biome, right? But if I'm low in vitamin D, right, it's just not going to function at its highest point. So that's why I'm passionate about lifetime learning. What else can we come to know about? And I've worked a lot with cold lasers. I love light. I love how the ATP gets activated in the mitochondria.
Yes.
And I just found a fabulous training that I'm doing this next weekend, which is kind of like the research and awareness of these modalities that are non-invasive, right? That are bringing balance. So again, lifetime learner, I'm super excited to go work with these couple of docs and take what I already know about cold laser and light therapy for healing to the next level. And particularly it's focusing on giving tone to the vagus nerve and how to upregulate the function of the parasympathetic nervous system. Because as you know, like I worked with people with chronic stress, right? It's showing up in their body, it's showing up in their behaviors, it's showing up, with anxiety, on and on. But if we can't get that regulation, right, in that autonomic nervous system, right? They're so fight or flight, so high sympathetic, and different ways work for different people. So I was really excited to find out with these docs protocol is, one other way to take what I already know and keep expanding on it. And so, I'm probably listening to every book on the brain on Audible as I walk, up the
Love
hill
it.
in the neighborhood. And I just want to encourage people that everyone can continue to learn, right? Dr. Amon's books have so much information in them, and just a simple application of one or two things will start to turn the corner and rebuild, right?
Absolutely.
And the thing that I've loved about this year, I know this sounds funny, but it's pushed on our weaknesses.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? It's like been that extra pressure, and it's the opportunity to discover what part do I need the support and the healing and the growth in. And so instead of feeling negative about ourselves or others, when we see that vulnerability, right, we see that fragility, we see that dysregulation, for me is the opportunity to continue the growth and the education for our own self-care. And I would say that's why I'm into empowering people to be their own artist, right? To create their own beautiful life and, tell their story, right? Have their tapestry of magnificence. And you're an example of that, right? How you came to get your work done originally at the Amen Clinic, and then how you were in your healing process and how that's led to you facilitating for the clinics and now supporting us as coaches. And I really honor you for that.
Thank you. Really sweet. Yeah, and it is about self-care and just like realizing the things that I didn't do that I needed to do, and then not doing certain things that I was probably doing too much. So I feel like that's helped me a lot, because I've always been self-aware, but I think sometimes if you're really self-aware and you're still making mistakes, you're like guilt, kind of guilt beating on yourself. And then once I started doing all of the things I knew I was supposed to do for my brain and my gut, things definitely just started kind of falling into place.
Isn't that cool that our bodies are so regenerative in their very nature?
It is. I mean, the power of the cell is just unbelievable. And we talk a lot about, vitamin D and healthy omegas, but also phosphatidylserine is a supplement that we have in a lot of our products. And Dr. Paris Kidd, who is our chief science officer that creates all of our supplements, studied phosphatidylserine for 15 years. And if you Google phosphatidylserine into PubMed.org, there's like thousands of articles. And it's one supplement that has thousands of articles proving that it can actually change the cellular membranes and make them healthy, especially if they were told that you might be not getting them back, which fortunately is what a lot of people say about Alzheimer's, is that those cells are dying. And, we know we can help the NFL players and we can help patients with Alzheimer's. We can help anybody.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you spoke to that, because it's so true. And my mom's 84 and she was really sick for a few years and we couldn't figure out the underlying problem with the cycle of inflammation. She had a vaccine trauma that put her
Wow.
system into acute overdrive, and the
Oh no.
manifestations were off the charts. And it was when we started doing exactly that, rebuilding the cellular tissue with the correct nutraceuticals and recalibrating her brain, she finally was able to recalibrate that. And I had her to every medical practitioner, dermatologist, anyone you could imagine. And everyone was functioning and offering their insight to the best of their ability. But it wasn't until we started meeting exactly what you're referring to and balancing the brain. I was doing regular neurobiofeedback with her, but she needed the supplementation. We had to clear old traumas in the amygdala. We had to give her body the building blocks for cellular repair. And she is doing amazing now.
Yay. That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
She must be a pretty special lady because you and your brother are pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you. Well, she's an earth angel. I'll put it that way.
Oh.
She's really a special woman, and works wonders in the garden. She's a beautiful singer. She's an artist herself. She's been an amazing giver, caretaker. She fed us organic food. She taught us about juice fasting, colonic.
How cool is that?
I grew up with a mom that was already on that
Wow.
channel. Mm-hmm.
Love that. Was that in SoCal?
Yes, California. And then also we lived in England for a period of time. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Very cool.
Over there we had homeopathy. There was just
Right. There's a lot more
mm-hmm.
kind of garden type stuff that you could probably do over there.
Yeah. So, I feel like part of my journey is an extension of all that she gifted me. And then when she was struggling, I felt so grateful that I could continue through my learning, really through that kind of infinity loop, circle back around and support her. And, we don't always get to make the difference in the lives of everyone we love, but we get to sometimes do it exactly how and when we need to. So I was grateful that I was able to be present with her, and COVID let me have the extra time to do that, because this was the year that we turned the corner for her.
Wow.
And I really felt like it was the information that I was continuing to build upon that made all the difference. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And if you wouldn't mind reminding everybody about your beautiful website and how to find you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my name, Sharon Plache, PLACHE.com. And then I've got a Facebook page, and, there's a lot of things I teach, and I've got independent pages for those. You're welcome to reach out to me, through my website or Facebook. And I'd be happy to connect and support in any way that I can. So,
yay.
Fallon. Yeah.
Awesome. So good to see you.
Oh, great to see you, and happy holidays.
Yes, you too.
Yeah. Okay, love. Thank you.
Thank you. You're amazing.
You are too. Right back at you.